hello everybody. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah. Okay. We've got a spare mic, so I'm the one who's got to shout. So welcome everybody. Nice to see so many people here, and why not? Because we're very, very lucky tonight because we have Hussein Falian with us. Now, I've known Hussein a very, very long time. And I was thinking this afternoon, what will I say about it? What do I need to say? Because I'm sure you all know so much about him already. And everything that I thought about Hussein, I thought something contrary. So I think he's a changeling. When I thought about him, I thought, well, he's very English, but he's not really English at all. His work really comes out of his private passions, but they become often public protest, or a use of public comment, or some sort of public question to which he sometimes provides the answers. He changes quixotically, well, it seems like quixotically, I'm sure it's not, but it's jolly hard work, but he changes between the commercial and the conceptual. He's been labelled, although I know sometimes that really irritates him over the years, he's been labelled the intellectual of fashion, but actually much of his work has a thread that is actually quite spiritual. And I think that he is fascinated by technology, but actually there's a mysticism about much of what he does. So whatever you think about, there's something else. And I was talking earlier, there's something quite contradictory about his work. And I was going to say unpredictable. It's not unpredictable. It has a very, very clear thread, a very clear handwriting, which is about him and about his view of the world, not necessarily about his view about fashion. And that's what makes him so fascinating and creative. So I'm sure you're going to, there's some questions that have been brought up by our students, and I'm pleased to also introduce Howell, which of course if you've been here for the previous talk, you will know Howell Davis runs our Fashion Communication and Promotion course here, and Howell's going to talk Hussein through some of those questions, and we'll see where it takes us. I'm sure it will be contradictory and possibly even unpredictable. Welcome, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying for So I'm basically going to go through some questions that students have sent in to the assignment for quiz this evening. So the first question, which is two parts to it, and the question from Hannah is, what is your most significant and also trivial memory of studying at college?
I would have said the most significant would have been the first day at college. When we were everyone was posing around because they had gone to St. Martin's. And everyone was so sort of self-conscious, and they were all we're all dying to kind of break the ice. And it would be about who would kind of say the first thing and who would be the first person to actually break the ice. I think the first day was really quite amazing because honestly, in those days, I always say this, there were such big numbers of people applying and such small numbers of people taken on to the course. So we all felt that this was such a big achievement, and I think that also everyone was so different from each other. So one person would have been really getting into the course with like live drawings, another one would have been a complete fashion victim, another one would have been like a real kind of product designer kind of person. It was really just such a broad spectrum. So I think it was, that first day was really, really kind of special. I mean, trivial would have been all the kind of people with their love affairs that would experience in what we call those days bar. And it would be like seeing how, it would be like Fame, the art school or something, where you'd see someone's cup shaking because the person that they fancied would be walking in. And you would see sort of people queuing up on how they dress, and there'll be all this sort of gossiping going on. look at them, they look like clones, and you know, I think it was sort of really those moments lived in the bar. I think that was my favourite hub at that time.
And were you the sort of person that the individual that did break glass?
Well, I had this really strange, in my view, sort of background. In one sense, I'm really a Londoner, and then I'm also Turkish Cypriot, I'm Mediterranean, and I have this other way of engaging. So I feel like I had actually I had this duality about me. I think I was, in one hand, quite timid, and on the other hand, quite kind of, you know, I had no limits. But I don't know, I think, you know, I made really, really good friends. And actually, I always say to become friends with truly English people, you become geriatric by the time you're friends with them. They don't let you in. But I really felt that I really made English friends while I was at St. Martin's. And actually, you have to be kind of in the same environment as people. They take a long time to get to know. Like, if I go to Istanbul now, often it takes 2 minutes to make a friend, but a lot of them don't last. So.
And do you think, how can you sort of explain what's actually shaped you as an individual?
Well, I felt that, does it sound alright? I can't actually hear it.
Can you not hear me?
Shall we do the, yeah, just do that. How did it shape me? I said this before, I felt like, when I went to Central St. Martin's, I really felt like I went to an art school, which fashion happened to be a department in that art school. So I felt like I really didn't go to a fashion school. I went to an art school, but fashion was one of the, you know, one part of it, and I mingled a lot with a lot of the fine artists and photographers and sculptors. So I really felt that it was a sort of multidisciplinary kind of platform. So I can't really say that it was a fashion school.
Another question, just similar about being college. Yes, what was the toughest challenge in college?
Poverty. I think I was really poor.
Yeah.
But then I'm happy that I was poor, because I think it made me think of things in an alternative way. And we were talking earlier with the tutors how a lot of graduates here want to think of themselves almost as professionals as soon as they graduate, without going through actually the hardship and how you build up a company and how you build up an image and all that, that you want to be like a professional immediately. And I think that's so contrived and so soulless for me. I think it was really about trying to create a spirit and a way of working. And I think for me, poverty has a lot to do with British life. I find it I think it's a good thing, because you become more inventive.
So do you think the struggle was part of your personal growth process? Still can't hear me.
Sorry, go again.
So the sort of struggle, your struggle with poverty, was that important for your own creative process?
I didn't think of it like that at the time, because when you're doing something, you don't think about those things, you just do it. But in hindsight, I think it did fuel it, yes. And I think that, you know, I would still, I wasn't like, you know, starving. I was creative around what I did, and I had some family support as well. But it was, yeah, definitely, I can say it fueled what I did, but I didn't think about it, I just got on with it.
You talked a bit before how you're very much at an art school and you just happened to be studying fashion. So do you think, could there been another path that you could have taken?
I think that if I was to reinvent my life, I would have done something to do with sound or music. Not necessarily, I would have been involved in it somehow. So I think of visual people really as sort of poor man's musicians. I think that we try to create the same effect as sound. We can never really do it as well as sound. I think sound is the most powerful thing that we could be immersed in. I think visual things come after. And I think that a lot of my work drives towards that same effect that sound can create. So I think that a lot of my work has a sense of life to it. That's why I try to create. So I think sound would have been what I do actually.
Okay.
I think about this a lot.
And do you think do you think you were giving the support you needed at college to achieve what you had?
To be honest, the best support I had was with other students, because we all respected each other. We were only 13 people in my group. We were all so different. And we so respected each other, and what my fellow students thought about me mattered more at times than what the tutor thought about me. Because we had our boundaries, and we all knew we all knew that we were very different, but we would be critical of each other in a constructive way. So I think other students really, it was really the students that made Central St Martin's, because the way they were chosen was the architecture of the place. It was the students that became the building, the work, and it was the differences of the students that created this whole, let's say.
And are you still friends?
Absolutely.
You've got that network that's from college.
I wish it was. I wish it could help them more. If I, how I put it, there are lots of people that I feel are really talented that haven't really had the opportunity to take their work further. And I think this is the story of London. There's so many talented people in London, and I just feel London doesn't always support them enough, and they all do better outside London. This is the problem, actually.
So moving on a bit now, because we're talking about how you work and how you design, and this is a question from Irina. And she asks, how do you begin a collection? Where do you start?
I start from the one before. I start from what I did before, or maybe the 2 or 3 I did before. It's an ongoing process. It's like a pot of curry that you put new ingredients into, because you have a base already, and I just put new ingredients in, and it gets juicier.
But do you feel there's a pressure from the industry or from your contemporaries that each sees a very definite change?
Well, the cycle sucks, really. It's inhuman, because you can't do as much development in that period. It's so short. So you end up doing eras of work. So in effect, it becomes like, let's say 2-3 seasons are connected, and the other 2 seasons are connected. So that's the only way you can do quality work, because you just don't have any time to dive into new things. So you can start a mini journey and then complete it for the next collection, maybe. And I'm never satisfied, so I'm always trying to push myself even further every time. And I think, I've been doing it for like 16 years now, and somehow I get re-enthused every time. And I just don't know how I get that, because so many things happen that can break my confidence. And somehow I get enthusiastic again.
And how do you actually, you talked a bit then about how you work on a series, so how do you know when it feels right? Is it a shift or a change?
There's an invisible law in my mind that I know when something feels right. And I'm really a compositional designer. I draw and draw like crazy. And those of you who see my book, you see I draw a lot. And I know when I've captured the right moment, and it's really hard to say what that is. And maybe that's what becomes, it's like this sort of corny word, but maybe that's when it becomes spiritual or something. You know the moment that is right. And I just don't know how to rationalize that.
And that's very personal.
It's personal, but it's also to do with my evolution. I know if I've improved myself or if I haven't. And there are certain collections I do where I know I'm happy, and others that I know actually it could have been better. But I think I'm very self-critical, and sometimes to the extent where, I feel it's ridiculous, really.
And in terms of the whole process from when you start the collection to the presentation, sales, which part is the most enjoyable?
Knowing what I'm going to, feeling what I'm going to do, and knowing what I'm going to do. And the most enjoyable part is when you can turn that into reality, that transformation, seeing your ideas become real. That is a really good feeling. All the things in the sales and things that follow afterwards, there are some great moments because you have loyal customers, and there are other customers that really, I can row with all of them, I want to. But I feel like the uncreative fashion, part of fashion, and the whole industrial side, which is to do with sales and all that, and people's opinions, it's a load of bullshit, to be honest. It's like you're dealing with people who are quite moody, you're dealing with a lot of how can I put it, gossip, because a lot of these journalists are spending time with each other for months on end. So they have to gossip about something. So it's quite, I don't know, I hardly think it's about the talent really.
But you have to understand your part within that cycle. You know, you're talking about the shows, the press, the sales. You know, have you got a really good, have you developed a good business understanding of what you need to do?
Definitely, I think I like the business side of it from the point of view that I like to see what succeeded, what people bought, how the sell-through was, and build on that. I am quite, I do have a network, and I am not one of those like really, I don't go out a lot in social groups, but I know a lot of people individually. So let's say a lot of those people you'd see in a party, a market, whatever, a lot of fashion people would socialize, and I would know them separately, and I'd see them one-to-one. I think there's something very private about me, and I like that, but also my work is also public, so this peculiar, you know, sort of duality really, and maybe I find it perverse as well.
And how much do you care about what people write about you?
God, I used to live by it. Oh my God! I mean, they haven't liked my collection, or you know, I would be so. You know, I mean, luckily enough, a lot of my reviews over the years have been luckily really good. But there have been times where people would kind of ridicule what I did or something, and I'll take it so personally. I don't know. I think it's a case of being happy with yourself and knowing that you tried your best. If I haven't tried my best, I would be upset. If I have tried my best and the result was the result, then I live with it.
And is there anybody else's opinion about you apart from your own?
It's always interesting to see what other designers say, and that is something that I find, you know, when I hear it, I'm fascinated. But I don't live by it. I mean, honestly, I think you can't compare yourself with other people. You have to kind of compare yourself to yourself and your evolution, and that's what matters. I mean, but I think you do have to be a certain kind of person to do fashion. You've got to be kind of confident, and you have to also be very critical, I think.
And are you talking about other designers? Are you happy to critique other designers' collections with themselves?
You know what? I can critique it if I'm asked, because I think I know every single reference now. I mean, I can look at a designer, I can say that bit is from that bit is from that bit is from, you know, I can tell you, but I've never been in that position. Maybe when I'm in my 70s, I'll be some TV program. I don't know, some sad bastard like criticizing people and being really bitter. I have no idea.
It's really interesting what you're talking about in terms of really understanding and being able to see the references. Yeah, and that's obviously because of your experience. Does that sometimes work as a negative in your own designing, that you're so aware of where everything comes from?
It can kind of contrive experiences. I think yes and no, because I think that fashion is not an industry that I think is taken seriously enough. And I think that it is a part of culture. People forget it's a part of culture, and it's seen as its own world. And I see it really as something that can shape our way of living and where we think and where we do things. And I actually think that fashion is also even influencing the art world, which it was always the other way around. Artists were inspiring fashion designers. Now I almost think there are some fashion designers inspiring artists. So I think actually it's interesting because it can do more than what we think. And it's about the way we do things. It's not only the way you dress, it's also what you eat, how you live, how you decorate your house. And I think so how you compose yourself. I think it's kind of almost a way to be.
I've just got another question here from Zoe, and she's asking about how do you retain creative control as your business is growing? Is it very hard to delegate responsibility?
No, you can't function if you don't delegate in the speed of things with the speed of things that, the speed in which we do things, you have to delegate. But you have to kind of delegate knowing what you're asking for. So if you're knowing what you're asking for, and you understand the issue very well, I think you will always, things will come back to you and you'll have to approve what you delegated. So delegating doesn't, mean that it's out of your hands. it means that it will come back to you and you have to judge it again then. So I think delegating only kind of spreads out the work. I don't think it helps you get rid of the work.
And so obviously you have a team that you work with from reflections. How do you decide what sort of person or designer is right for you and your team?
The way it's working for us is that we have a lot of people that come as they do like a work experience. I get to know them, I get to see how they work, and often it evolves from that. So the knowing of each other is a really important thing. So it's actually quite hard sometimes to employ someone from scratch, unless you know their previous experiences and where they were before, and that you really feel that that they can contribute something meaningful.
And is it a lot to do with your understanding of their character as well as their own work?
It's to do with filling in a gap that I might need at that time, because I have got, let's say that I have no deadlines in the world, and I had, no financial restraints. For me, it would be like, it's the best job in the world, but the financial restraints and the deadlines makes it one of the hardest jobs in the world. So I feel usually getting other people in is to do with that kind of cycle, so that you can finish things on time and that you rely on their skills as well. Of course, it can be my vision, but they have to contribute in some way in order for things to happen. So I can't say that, yes, it is my vision and I started this whole way of thinking, but the teams help you meet the deadlines, their skills are valuable. But let's say that I decided to stop the whole thing and work on my own as one other person, I could only then work maybe as a consultant, but not as a company.
So, talking a bit about your previous collections, this is a question from Shin Hee, and the question is there any specific collection that you'd like to design again?
Yeah, I saw that one on the list, and I would have said probably some of my earlier collections. If I look back, the intention and what actually happened at the end were very different, or not good enough for me. I would have said that probably I want to redesign the first 4 years.
Because your earlier collections, you were very much known for your presentations and big productions, and did that in some way get in the way of what you were trying to communicate?
I think what happened, this is a very important point for anyone who's interested in my work. I think what happened to us is, because I always cared that the presentations were like cultural events, you would come to a show, look at clothes, you'd have live music, and you'd have the clothes presented as sequences, so it became this experience. In a way, I wanted it to be like how I would want a fashion show to be. But then, a lot of the showpieces would get photographed, and actually most of the collection is really wearable, and that's how we actually survived as a business, because we sold clothes. And then I'm thinking, well, the press would take pictures of the showpieces, but actually, then I felt that our clothes were influencing, let's say, the industry. But it's a very peculiar thing to talk about, because those people, what would be influencing let's say the industry wouldn't really be my table skirt, it would really be my compositions and my way of thinking about clothes. So there was this strange gap between the two, I think. You'd be photographed for your showpieces, and that's what people would remember you by. But actually, I would go into shops, like high street stores, and see, I'm exaggerating, but really see a lot of elements of my collection.
Yes.
So it was a strange, duality.
So, when you think about doing your presentations now, is there a different way of approaching it?
Our presentations recently, I wanted to do a bit more about the clothes, to be honest. But, with the show Just This Season Gone, and the 2 seasons before that was the film, and actually making films, I find, I've been doing them for nearly 10 years now, so it's not part of this trend about fashion film. I've been really doing it for a long time. I think it's a lot harder work because you have to shoot a lot more in advance, and the editing process is really quite hard and time consuming. And I think it's been actually harder than doing a show for me. And I wanted there to be other way of presenting clothes. Why not?
When you moved from showing in London to Paris, did you have to really hard what you were doing then?
No, I did exactly the same thing, except that our business grew when we went to Paris because there were a lot more people coming, and the buyers there there was just a lot more people, going through the showroom, and it was a business decision to go to Paris. I really enjoyed being in London, but at the time that we were showing, there were just not enough people coming. So I thought, I'm making all this effort, and just not enough people are coming. So
it's a question here from Lips, and it's. Have you ever felt uninspired or disappointed in the industry?
Gosh, I think that some of the, how can I put it? I think that the fashion world is not like the most intelligent world or inspiring world, I have to say, but there are people in it that I really like. So it's like any industry in a way, but I find that it's a very cliquey kind of industry, and I guess I have my clique, and I'm happy with it. And but if you ask, well, how do I put it? I'd say that I've made my own niche, and I'm happy with that niche, and I feel lucky that I was able to do that. I don't consider myself really part of the industry in that traditional sense. I do see myself as a bit of an outsider. But I've made the outsider into a thing in itself.
It's easy to survive as an outsider.
Well, I actually think it's difficult to survive as an outsider because people don't know where to categorize you. They don't know where to pigeonhole you. So you can get a bit lost, and you can feel lonely, and you can feel lonely, meaning professionally lonely. And you can feel like, well, where do I belong, And but I think it's those in-between people that maybe are more interesting in the world. Maybe they need to be given more of a chance, I don't know. This is not just a fashion for any other people that are in between disciplines.
Another question from Maria is, what do you feel about celebrity culture?
Did you guys hear that question?
Did you hear that? It's a quick put now, sorry. And the question was, how do you feel about celebrity culture and its influence on fashion?
I think there's something about it. If it's genuine, that if someone like Kate Moss has a following, because she's quite a stylish girl and she can create that aspirational collection, if that works, I think, why not? But if it doesn't work and it's just done for the sake of it because the person has a name, then I think it sucks.
Have you ever engaged in working with celebrities?
Oh God, I haven't engaged in it, but there was one experience I had where I had done a jean collection for J Brand, this American brand, and they gave us dinner for it in New York. And they sat Kanye West opposite me. And there was this model Chanel next to me, and Chanel was saying, oh, Kanye, if you do anything, I want to be part of it, And I was like cringing, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm hearing this. And then Kanye was saying, what do you think of Lan Lan? What do you think of her? So I said, just, can you just shut up and do me a rap, And he did it. It's on my iPhone, but I'm not going to make you listen to it. And it was a really good rap.
Just going back a bit about talking about you developing, working in film, which you have done for a long time, do you see that the whole nature of fashion week's changing? Is there always going to be the biannual events, or would you think people are going to think about the fashion industry needs to change?
Well, I think that, I kind of describe my life at the moment like a bit of a hamster wheel. I'm just on this constant hamster wheel, and I don't know who creates all this demand. Who is going out buying clothes like non-stop? I don't understand how there is this demand that we have to then become victims to this. I question it, and I don't know. It's this peculiar law that you become a victim to that, and you think, well, how could people be possibly buying clothes that quickly? But obviously, it's to do with keeping the economy going. And I do feel like things are getting faster and faster. Sometimes I tell my partner, but is time just being kind of speeded up? What's happening? Like, I'm at the office every day. Everyone in my office, we're all going there every day and thinking, how could anyone want to buy so much clothes all the time? So you sometimes do feel a bit stupid, actually. Yeah.
And do you think about how you can, remove yourself from that cycle? Is it easy to make those decisions?
I think that when you establish a client base, you can decide maybe that you are happy enough to do smaller collections when you feel like it, and maybe just work with your clients. Maybe that's a much nicer way of doing it, and you can make it more personal, and then you're not on this constant hamster wheel.
And this is just a few sort of more random questions. Where do you feel most at home?
I feel most at home with people that I love, like my family, and they could be anywhere. I could be in Paris, I could be in Tokyo. I can have my family with me with their vine leaves, and I could be in Japan, I can feel at home. So it's a case of where I am, it's a case of who I'm with rather than where I am. Yeah. And
the last question, what was the most valuable and influential piece of advice given to you, and who gave it to you?
So it's not meant to sound like name dropping because it's actually real. I did this film with Tilda Swinton for one of my projects, and she said one thing to me that really stuck with me. And she said that, because I was lamenting about, how the kind of more experimental designers are dismissed as conceptual and whatever, and that's become this sort of poo-poo word, conceptual. I hate that word now. And I was saying to her, how do you go about it? And you are seen as an art house actress. And she said to me that there's no reason why not. More, experimental approach or the alternative approach could be also widespread. Why couldn't more people have access to people who are experimental? And that really stayed with me, I think. So the idea that I thought before, God, I have a niche and I can only appeal to a small number of people. And that kind of empowered me to think, maybe even if I'm niche, and even if it is quite, let's say, specialized, why couldn't it reach more people? And that, I think, was the best advice I ever had, because it made me feel like, actually, maybe I shouldn't feel like what I'm doing is just for a bunch of people, and maybe I can, other people can be inspired by it, and in the same way, I guess, that she probably meant it in like how she's art house, but now she's in Hollywood. Maybe why not? More specialist designers, have the equivalent of that.
And then one last question, sorry. Just what piece of advice would you give to maybe an awful lot of aspiring fashion students here?
Don't take yourself too seriously, honestly. And do it only if you've got something to say, because there's so many designers out there that can't even realise their dream and they have businesses. So I would say do it if you have something to say, and take your work seriously, not yourself. I think too many fashion people take themselves too seriously.
That's about the word. Sorry, thank you very much, everybody. Also now, if anybody wants to buy Hussein's book, he's very kindly going to do a book signing in the corner, which I hope you know this is going to happen. So Hussein will be over there signing books. Thank you.